Namaste. So today I want to talk about harmony as a lifestyle and harmony as a spiritual lesson itself. So what is harmony? What does it mean to you? Well, if we're talking from the perspective of music, then harmony refers to the relationships or the intervals present between two or more notes. And so typically what we have in music is a beautiful composition of many layers of tones sounding really pleasing together. We break down harmony actually even into two more distinctions, which is that of consonant, which means the notes that sound really pleasant and beautiful together, or dissonant harmony, and those are the notes that usually don't sound so pleasant together. Now, what does that mean, and how does that lesson in music translate into our lives? Well, where are the parts and the elements of your life that are in harmony? And where are those where there is some sort of friction or dissonance happening? So the exploration of harmony allows us to really look at all of the different aspects of our lives, the different aspects of our personality, the different layers of the self, and so on. And so we can go into quite a detailed exploration of all of the different elements that make us who we are to discover whether or not we're living a life of harmony or not. To me, harmony really refers to the unification of the body, mind, and spirit. And that unification of one aligned being coming into alignment and a symbiotic relationship with everything around them. And so that means we come into a state of harmony when we recognize we are one with nature, that we are connected to all things, all elements, all beings, and all of spirit. That there is no disconnection, there is no separation from that which is outside to that which is inside. And so in that way, harmony is also the unification of our macrocosm, of everything that's external to us and important to us, and the microcosm of everything that's going on inside of us. So when we begin to align the microcosm and find balance between all of the different layers of self that constitute our own microcosm, then we start to come into unification and balance with the macrocosm. Similarly, if we recognize that everything that's outside of us is also within us, then we can create harmony through finding a recognition and a reciprocity with all of nature outside of ourselves, as that is representative of the elements that are within us. So we might even look to the 5 elements to guide us and recognize the earth as our body, and the water as our blood, our tears, our sweat, the air as our breath, and the fire as that which drives our spirit onwards and connects our hearts. When we see nature filled with all of these aspects and elements, then we see that they are similarly within us. We begin to yoke together the outer and the inner worlds. Nature is one of our most wonderful demonstrations of harmony. We typically like to say, look to nature. What is the forest doing? How can we replicate and mimic what nature is doing? And nature is just being. There is nothing to be done in nature. Natural processes go on themselves without being overthought. It is just a conglomeration of many systems working together. When we see in nature also all of the different relationships between different animals, insects, the trees, the birds, the bees, the way that the poop of the animals gives back to the earth and becomes nutrient for more plant life to grow and thus sustain more animal life and insect life, and the way that these systems are constantly cycling and spiraling around one another in a symbiotic relationship, then we see also that nature grows in a mathematical way that's present and referred to as whole number proportions. And those whole number proportions are given to us, the most beautiful examples being that of the octave, the 1:2 ratio in nature, which could be experienced as our Shiva Shakti split within ourselves. So that the octave in music is here to represent in nature polarity, and that allows the cosmos to function with night and day, hot and cold. It allows us to create a pendulum of experience where we are able to move between an infinite array of different experiences with the extreme polarities on each side. The other whole number proportion that's really important in music is referred to as the golden number. It's the perfect fifth interval, and this is a 2-to-3 ratio, and this ratio is present in so much of nature when we look around ourselves, not just outside of ourselves but within ourselves as well. The human body is put together and is created typically mathematically as a relationship between the different limbs, and we see in nature the way that flowers blossom, the way a rose bud will begin to unravel, or the horns on different animals and so on, spirals in shells, the orbit of the planets, the relationships between different planets. Then we see that this perfect fifth interval plays a key part in nature of allowing growth and vibrancy and a thriving to come about. And so when we look inside ourselves as well, we see that there are relationships of the same mathematical proportions. In music, when we look towards the idea of our most pleasing harmonies, such as the octave and then the perfect fifth, third and fourth, then what we start to see is that we have the presence of whole number proportions between those different notes or tones and the different intervals that are represented by the harmony. And so that which is most pleasing to us typically creates the largest whole number proportion between the different elements. As life, and similarly in music, becomes more dissonant, then the fraction starts to get larger. We start to see things like 9/12 or 15/8, things like this, and the number starts to become smaller in that way as the fraction becomes bigger. And in music we hear more dissonance in that harmony. So it's not to say that it isn't a harmony, because harmony can refer to dissonant harmonies too. But it means that the relationship between those different elements or notes are less in alignment of a thriving symbiotic relationship. And that's really interesting, that the representation that our musical system has and allows us to show the relationships we have to the different aspects of ourselves. So we might start to look inside of our own experience and to recognize that our human experience, or what it is to be human, consists not just of this physical self, but ultimately of a physical, emotional, energetic, mental, and spiritual level of experience. Now, when there is a certain dissonance between any of these layers of ourselves, then we are not living a life of harmony. We are not in a state of ease and flow and grace, allowing harmony to flow. And so how might we bring balance between our physical and emotional or energetic bodies? Well, we know that within this scope of yoga, we have the practices of pranayama, of visualizing, working through the chakra system and so on, and anchoring a lot of those practices into a physical layer of our experience. But it goes beyond that, and the practices that we might be using in our yoga practice, to recognize that what it is to create harmony is a lifestyle practice. And when we are able to walk an embodied path of our truest essence that yokes together how we feel about ourselves at the emotional and energetic level, the energy that we experience flow through us, and how we cultivate that as a storehouse of prana and allow that to thrive, then we begin to allow the physical body to really start to shine as well. The relationship also between the emotional and the mental level of being is a crucial relationship to inviting harmony into our lives. And so if we, at the mental level, are full of criticism and judgment, well, we're creating dissonance in our emotional and energetic field. And that will start to eventually emanate its way into the physical layer of our experience, to be experienced potentially as dis-ease in the body. So we can also start to relabel disease as dis-ease, not just dis-ease itself, but recognizing that dis-ease, a lack of ease in life, is ultimately a dissonance between the different layers or levels of our experience, or a dissonance in the relationships between people closest to us, for example. This may also come towards our attitudes, our beliefs, the conditioned structures of the mind that we have inherited from our society, from our ancestry, and so on. And recognizing sometimes that there is a dissonance between the belief structures that we've inherited and that we've been given and those that we truly recognize for ourselves to be our truths. And when there's a dissonance at that level of experience, then that will also emanate out from that level of experience, whether it's from the spiritual or the mental level, and move into energetic, emotional, and even physical layers of ourselves as well. And so I think it's really key to start to analyze and explore, well, where is there harmony? How can I embody the truth that I carry of my essence and be absolutely true to my essence in every step that I take along my path? And so this really is now taking our yoga to the next level and understanding that when everything is in alignment, our experience as who we are, the layers of our being, from the physical to the emotional, mental, and spiritual selves, then we start to find a higher alignment. People begin to recognize that there is no dissonance between these different layers of our experience, and we start to shine, we start to radiate the truth of who we really are. When we look to these relationships in music as guidelines for how to actually be in this world, then we recognize that everything is made up of vibration. All sound is vibration. We are vibration. All manifestations of matter are also vibration. The underlying law of physics, a principle of resonance. And what this is really meaning is that that which is vibrating at a particular frequency will attract to it vibrations of the same frequency. And we use this in our languaging, obviously, where we start to say, oh, I really resonate with that, with what you're saying. And what we're trying to say is, yes, I hear you, and I have similar beliefs to you. I recognize that truth within myself, perhaps. And so resonance being a fundamental principle upon how the universe operates is something that we're able to use in that way as a tool to shift vibration. And if that means that we need to uplift ourselves into a higher alignment of our truest self, we might recognize sometimes when destructive thought patterns begin to rise, and a part of ourselves, our higher intellect, recognizes that that is not the truth at all of our experience and who we are. And that mechanism that we have within ourselves as that aspect of witness consciousness and higher intellect that can make the distinction and the discernment of that which is and isn't truth has the opportunity to therefore choose a different reality, to choose a different truth to embody and to walk in our path. And so as we choose to shift our own vibration, we similarly then allow all of the patterns that are no longer serving us to start to fall away and be dissolved. There's many different practices that we can use to keep ourselves uplifted and walking within a high vibration. And that might be surrounding ourselves by inspiring teachers or in inspirational reading, keeping ourselves stimulated through the activities that enliven our bodies and minds and raise our vibration energetically. So we might love to practice singing and chanting mantras and bhajans and so on, as well as maintaining a daily practice of stillness and mindfulness, keeping our bodies young through yoga asana. All of these things are helping to provide a container that is able to create space for life to fully flow through it in a thriving manner. And so resonance is a tool that we can use in order to keep ourselves in check. And when we do notice that things around us are no longer in a state of ease and grace, well, then we can use the principle of resonance to invite a higher vibration, whether that's through a particular practice or actually even through the power of our own voice, exploring music, exploring expression, or through listening to uplifting sounds, perhaps. Symbiosis is referring to the relationship of harmony being expressed through multiple elements. And when everything is in alignment, that there is harmony, there is consonant harmony happening in the body or in nature, then what we start to see is that thriving relationships symbiotic relationships begin to evolve, and those are the relationships that support different systems and different elements of the system. Those symbiotic relationships might be maintaining a spiritual sangha around ourselves that allows us to reconnect with our truth, to reflect back to one another the essence of who we are when we start to get lost in the day-to-day world of life that can be very chaotic around us, and how to anchor back into stillness, presence, mindfulness, contentment, gratitude, and all of these really beautiful, uplifting attitudes that could be considered divine virtues. And then what we start to see is we start to have an experience of grace beginning to unfold around us, that we start to walk a path of grace and ease as everything begins to flow, when there is harmony between our bodies and our minds and our emotions, and our emotions and our spirituality. We start to see an optimal flow of prana where we find ourselves feeling connected to all that is. And we may start to discover that the expression of our life force energy is vibrant, full, healthy, connected, and united in harmony.